For those of you who have seen this before, we're going to, you'll see some things the same and you'll see some things different. I'm really glad that Mike is here to help me out when I get stuck about some of this overseas travel. But anyway, I'm going to ask you to hold your questions because this is a bit long and I'd like to get through it all, and I'll be happy to stay later after the meeting if we run out of time. This is not a really how-to presentation, it's more of a demonstration, but there are 2 or 3, 4 how-to things in here that some of you may know already and some of you will be new for you. So it's kind of a mixture of how-to and informational stuff. And amazingly, I did this 2 years ago, and I would say at least 50% of what I had on here had to be updated. That's how fast everything changes. Anyway, the first thing, and some of this is personal, so everybody would have their own ideas about what they want to do. But before you leave, you might think about doing some of these things. Can you hold that bag up for me, dear? I like to...
You have to make sure he's on the payroll now.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you, this is the bag that I use. It's just one that I bought off the internet. But the reason I like this bag is because it has a shoulder strap. And so I have a kind of a thin cover for my iPad, which some of you don't have, but I like to carry it in a bag that I can put on my shoulder, especially when I'm traveling on planes or in airports or where I'm public transportation, so I can have my hands free. I'm always afraid I'm going to lay down my iPad somewhere and not pick it up again. So that's the reason for that choice. If you're going to put any photos into your iPad while you're traveling, you need a camera connection kit. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you don't have an SD card, you have, like I have a memory stick, then you might need a card reader. And the card reader that you would need would have to be one with power because the non-powered ones no longer work with the iPads. If you do a lot of typing, you might want to have a separate keyboard either on your cover or a Bluetooth one. If you're going to be on a long trip, a backup battery can be purchased. They're not real expensive and they are handy, especially if you're like watching movies or something on the plane. I found a little strip I'll show you in a minute that doesn't take a lot of suitcase room. And if you go overseas, of course, you need adapter plugs for your power. So you need to find out which country has which plug so you get the right one. If you want to go online, other than Wi-Fi, you need a data plan or a SIM card and a whole bunch of apps. So let's see where we go. This is my carry bag, and I have extra pockets in it. I keep some of my cables and other things in there that I find handy. The camera connection kit has 2 parts. One is, this one is for the SD card, and it plugs into the bottom of your iPad, and then the card from your camera goes in there, and then you can just, all your photos will show up on your iPad. And then you can choose to keep all of them or only import certain ones. It gives you that choice. You have to tap on the ones you want to import, or you have to import them all. This is for a USB connector, and that is a cord that will go from your camera into the iPad, and it has a little USB port right down there. And here you can see what it looks like with the SD card in it. Now, one of the issues is the new iPads and iPad minis have a different connector at the bottom of the iPad. They have what they call the lightning connector, which is a smaller one. So this camera connection kit will no longer fit. This runs about $29 in the Apple Store. Now, I believe you can get it, I haven't tried this, but I would check with the Apple Store people, but I believe you can get an adapter that you could hook into the bottom of the camera connection kit, and then it would work with your new devices. I also went online and I found that they are now selling a USB lightning connector and an SD lightning connector. The problem is you buy them separately and they cost $29 each. So if you're always going to use the card and you're never going to use the connection kit, then buy the one you want, otherwise you're paying double price for it. So, but I would definitely check with the Apple Store and make sure you're getting the correct one for your device. And if you, as I mentioned before, if you have a different kind of memory card and you want to go directly into your camera, you have to have one that plugs into power because the non-powered ones will no longer work. You can buy wireless keyboards, Bluetooth keyboards, if you're going to do a lot of typing. Otherwise, you can type on the virtual keyboard, or if you have one attached to your cover, that will work. If you're not going to do a lot of typing, if you're just going to send small emails, you probably don't need it, and you maybe don't want to carry an extra device with you. There are a lot of backup batteries online. I would just go to any online place, and you plug them in, and they have like about 8 hours of backup battery. So when your battery's starting to slow down after 8 hours on the plane, you can plug this in and keep going. This is a strip that I got from Magellans.com. There are others you can buy also, but as you see, it's very small and it's easily fits in a suitcase. I think there are probably some better ones out there. I have one at home that I plug into my kitchen counter, and it has 4 spots for USB things to come out of. It's like a spider, and we use it all the time for our phones and our iPads. But this has 1 USB port, and it has 3 regular outlets, and it works for dual voltage. So I'm not promoting this company or anything, it's just this one works for me. I bought it for my son-in-law who travels a lot overseas, and I found it fit nicely in the suitcase, so that was helpful. And of course you have to get the converter items that you want. Depending on the country. UK is different than Europe, and so check about that. The other thing I would recommend is if you're going to send emails to a whole bunch of people and you want to like write one email and send them to a bunch of people, then I would suggest that you set up your group before you leave home if you're going to use the mail program on your iPad, because you can't set up the group on your iPad with the Apple Mail program. I used to write postcards to my grandkids and everything, and my hand was sore by the end of the day, and I was trying to get the mail to the right port, and then I decided I'm going to send them pictures and an email postcard, and I'm going to send it one time to everybody. So that saved me a lot of time, so that's one of the things that I really like. This part about connecting online, I've done a lot of talking to several of our members who have helped me with this. So I'm going to mention a few things about that. Whether you have Wi-Fi or you have Wi-Fi and data, you may want to connect online with your iPad. On the ships you can get Wi-Fi, but you're going to pay for it. I found that I preferred to do it on the ship because I felt that was the safer Wi-Fi than some of these things that you can run into the ports, especially in some countries. So that was my preference, but you will pay for it. So that's why I tell you, type up your emails and get everything done that you want to do. Then go online on the ship, and then download your emails or whatever, and then go offline and read them offline. And then you're online for the shortest amount of time. If you're visiting family, they might have a home network you can hook into. Hotels, a lot of them have Wi-Fi, but not always in the room. Sometimes you have to go to the lobby or places like that. There are Wi-Fi hotspots. I know they're around here in this country. I don't know, probably you'll see them in Europe. I don't know about other countries. There are internet cafes. We went to one in Bangkok one time, and like for $2 we were online for a couple of hours. Libraries, sometimes you can get on. You can get international data plans if you have cellular. You can buy SIM cards. We'll talk about that in a minute. You can also get MiFi. MiFi is like a little hotspot that you carry with you. And you can buy them or you can rent them. You can buy them for the U.S., you can buy them for overseas.
International plan.
Somebody's reading my things online there. Okay, if you have cellular on your iPad, that means you have a contract, well, you wouldn't have a contract, but you have some kind of arrangement with AT&T or Verizon, possibly Sprint, to get data. That's to download information. I would recommend, unless you really need it, not to use it when you're traveling, unless you're traveling in this country, because it can be very pricey. However, there are ways around it, and we'll talk about some of those. If you are in AT&T, you can contact them. If you're on Verizon, you can find out how much it costs you to have your data running overseas. You can also purchase micro SIM cards. If your iPad can go online through cellular, then you can get a SIM card that fits into that little slot. And a lot of people don't even know they have it on the side of your iPad. There's a little slot where you can take out that mini SIM card and put another one in. On the iPad, it is not locked. So if you want to, say you're going to France and you go there and you get a little SIM card, you can take the one out that's in your iPad and put this SIM card in, and you will pay either for an amount of time or an amount of megabytes that you buy. You can like buy one for 30 days, you can buy one for 3 months, and it's all different prices, and we'll talk about that. If you have cellular on your iPad and you buy a SIM card, make sure you find out where it works, because SIM cards that work in this country may not necessarily work overseas, or ones that work in Germany may not necessarily work in France or England or Spain. Another thing that Eckhart mentioned to me is he bought a SIM card once at a store overseas, and it didn't have the correct access point name on it, so he had to go back to the store to make sure he had the right access point name. Whatever that means, just make sure that it works before you leave the store. Usually they'll put the card in for you. That's my understanding. I haven't ever done it, but that's my understanding. You can go on Google, and they have tons of websites where you can buy SIM cards. A lot of folks use the Vodafone, but there are plenty of other vendors. Some countries do not allow streaming from the U.S. For example, if you have Netflix or something and you want to try to watch movies when you're in another country, you may or may not be able to do that. So think about not doing that. Also, the other thing that Eckhart pointed out to me is when he Googles on the SIM card he buys in Germany, it brings him the German version of Google. So it's not the English language, it's the German language version. So he purchased an app called Netscape, which fools the internet provider thinking you were in the US and not. It's sort of like a virtual network, but if you're going to do a lot of Googling, you want to check to see if it's in the language you can read. Many of the suggestions I just wrote you about the cards work fine in the iPad. This is not an iPhone class, but I wanted to bring to your attention that does not necessarily work the same for the iPhone. because iPhones are locked, especially if you're on contract. Now, if you have a US iPhone and you want to use the SIM card overseas, if you have Verizon, they will unlock it for a period of time for, what, about 5 times, Mike, something like that? I don't know. But anyway, somebody told me there's a certain number of times they'll unlock it for a certain length of time.
I had one unlocked over a year ago, and it's still unlocked.
Okay.
So in my case, 2 different phones have been permanently unlocked.
Okay.
Under the Verizon.
Right.
AT&T.
AT&T will not unlock your phone if you are still on the 1st or 2nd year of your contract. After the 2nd year of your contract, then they will unlock it when you request it. However, it takes about a week to do it. So if you want to unlock an old iPhone, make sure you give yourself time. I put some websites on the bottom here because there was so much information there that I didn't want to put it all in this presentation. But Rick Steves has several web pages about using cell phones in Europe, about smartphone use and prepaid SIM cards and so forth. So if you are interested, you can check those out. That's for the phone. Okay, let's go back to Wi-Fi. Let's assume you're not going to use SIM cards. Let's assume you're not going to go on the cellular. You're just going to Wi-Fi. As I mentioned before, you can usually get them at hotels. You will pay, for the most part. Very few have them for free. And you may not have them in your room. So check ahead on the price. The one good thing, though, about having the having the Wi-Fi at your hotel is if you want to download information about where you are, maps or public transportation, everything, you can do that at the hotel. And then you can turn off your Wi-Fi and you still will have it on your iPad to follow while you're traveling that day. So that's an advantage. As I mentioned before, read and write offline to save money. Also, if you have, in the privacy setting, there is a place called location services, because they always want to ask you, can we use your location? Now, the problem with using location is it also uses up time and power and so forth. So any locations that you're not using, turn them off, because if you have your Wi-Fi on, it's going to keep looking for your location, so that will help you. Another thing I would suggest is turn your iPad off completely between uses. I have this habit of hardly ever turning my iPad off. I always put it to sleep. And when I was on the ship, on one of my trips, I had the worst time trying to get online. It was going round and round. I spent like a half hour of my precious minutes trying to get online. So somebody suggested I turn my iPad off and turn it back on, and whoop, it went right on. So depending upon what the Wi-Fi network is where you are, you may lose time trying to get online because something is not connecting right. So that's why I would suggest you do that. You can keep in touch with people through email on Wi-Fi. You can use Skype. If you use it's very inexpensive and works great all around the world. FaceTime, if the other party has to have FaceTime, or they have to have messages to do that. So if you want to Skype, make sure the person you're Skyping to has Skype, or if you want to use FaceTime, make sure the person does. If you're going to pick up Wi-Fi in strange places that you don't know and you feel uncomfortable that somebody's going to be breaking into your system, then I suggest you might want to look into a virtual privacy network. Is that Peter Gunn? Something. You can look for them online. We didn't have time in this presentation to use virtual privacy networks, but I know that Mitch has used them, and Vicki has used them, and maybe a few others have used them. But it is a protection, especially at airports. That's a very dangerous place for people to break into your system. So if if you're going to think about using this a lot at airports, that's something that you might want to do. It does take a little longer because you have to sign on to your virtual privacy network and then go on to wherever you're going to, your next site. So it is a little bit of a pain, but it is a good protection if you want to make sure nobody's going to come by and steal information out of your iPad. Also, you can passcode protect your iPad in the settings place if you haven't already done so. What are the things you can do with your iPad when you travel? You can email. I found that we were away for months at a time. I found that very handy, especially with family. I paid some of my bills online while I was away. My credit card bill came up and so forth. Anything that I pay online or that's not automatic, some things you can't pay automatically. I try to set up, like with my Florida Power and Light, and you know, the kind of the utilities that you use, you can set up automatic pay with them, and just make sure you check your statement every month to see that it's accurate. And that's very handy if you travel. But some bills you can't do that. So another thing is that you can get travel information and things like that. So that's kind of handy. Word processing, if you keep journals, or like we used to do, go to port lectures before we got into a port, taking down significant information, or you want to write notes to yourself, or whatever word processing you want. Photos, iPad is great for photos. You can back up your photos. You can share photos with your friends you're traveling with. You can show people photos of your family, whatever, lots of things. I'll show you something on numbers that I found very handy. And then you might want to bring copies of your camera manual and some how-to things on the iPad, and maybe copies of your credit card information and copies of your passport. You can put all this on your iPad. And any other important data, prescription information, whatever else that you want to have with you in case of emergency. You know, some people with volcanoes exploding and floods hopping, and sometimes you get delayed a couple weeks getting home from where you are and you need information. You can read books on your iPad. You can load up, you can read them. I listen to books on my iPhone, but you can also listen to books on your iPad. You can get audio books. You can buy books through iBooks. You can get books from the public library. Of course, they have a 2-week time limit on them usually. You can also read Kindle books on there. And I find between listening to books, reading books, and watching movies, I can travel a long time on the plane. Games always are fun to do. And as I say, listen to music and books. And watch movies. I'm going to show you how to email a postcard using mail. It's not really a postcard, it's an email, but I call it an email postcard. I've done this before, but for those of you who haven't seen it, it's pretty easy. You open your Photos app, and wherever you want to, you can open all the photos, you can open your photo stream, your albums, events, any of those places, so that your pictures are showing individually on the screen. And then you go up to edit right there and press edit. And then you tap on any of the pictures until they get a little blue arrow on it. If you're emailing, you don't want to send 100 pictures. You want to just send a couple pictures, because otherwise it's not going to work too well and you're going to use too much time on the internet sending them. And then you go up to the share in that corner, and you'll get a little dialog box, and then you just tap on mail. So that's pretty easy. That, by the way, has changed since the way they do that. It's the same but a little different than it used to be. Then you will get an email popping up in mail. And on this line, you'll see a little plus sign, and that's where you get your addresses from your contacts. And if you have a group already set up, you'll get that group. You will have to individually choose the people out of that group, but at least you won't have to go through all of your contacts to find people. And on this line, it says images. And if you see where that says 7.7 megabytes, that's way too big to send in the email. So what you want to do, if you tap on that image here, it'll give you choices of sizes. It'll give you about 4 choices. Original size, never use original size, it's way too big. Medium, large, and small. Small, and if people aren't going to print this, they're just going to look at it. Small or medium is probably just fine. Okay, so once you tap on this little plus sign here, you'll get your groups. And I was looking at this and it said adult family cruise, and I thought, what are people going to think about that? And basically what it was is the family cruise was my kids, my brother, my brother-in-law, and all the grandkids. And then the adult family cruise was just the adults, because the grandkids didn't want all the same information the adults did. So it wasn't anything untoward. Anyway, so I'm choosing the test group that I made up before I left. And so you see I'm in groups here, but you could go into all contacts and send it to individually to anybody. After that, there's 2 people in this group, so you can select both of them or one, but you have to select them one at a time, unfortunately. Then if they have more than one email address, it'll give you that choice. And so now I have selected both of the people. I have my pictures already there. I type in the subject and the message, and the message goes right up above the pictures. If you want, you could put it afterward too. And then you can press send. If you are online, it will go. If you are not online, it will go into your outbox. And then when you go online, it will automatically send. Another choice is to hit cancel up here. And it gives you 2 options. One is to delete it, and the other is to save it as a draft. So a lot of times I would either do it when I was offline, and then it would just automatically send, or I'd save it as a draft, and maybe I was doing a couple of emails that day for whatever reason, and then when I went online, I would send them. If it's in the draft box, you have to get it out of there for the send to come up. So if you go to your draft box and you find the email, tap on that email, and then the send button will come up. If you just take it out of the draft, if you just look at it in the draft box, you won't be able to send it until you tap on it and, I guess, activate it somehow. If you want to send more than just pictures or text, this is a very, I think, excellent group email app. It's called Group Email exclamation point. So, because there's a lot of them in the App Store, so do it exactly the way I have it up here if you want to buy it. And the nice part about that is you can do a lot more things with it than you can do with just mail, if this is important to you. It may not be, but if it is, you might want to look at this one. You can put documents, you can send documents through the mail with this. There is, like if you have, say you're in Pages, and you want to send, well let me use that example. Say you're in Pages and you want to send something to somebody. When you go to open in Pages, it will give you the choice of this particular app to open up your document in there. And it will save it in there for you to attach it to your mail. You can send videos, photos, V-cards, contact information. You can send a map image of your location, and you'd have to have that location on. It will send audio clips and whatever you have on your pasteboard. So there's a lot of choices. It works with Pages, Numbers, and any other open-in apps that you have. iCloud, Google Drive, SugarSync, Evernote. And the other good thing about this is if you don't make up your group before you leave, and you want to make up a new group while you're away, you can make up a new group in the list section of this app. So it does give you the opportunity to make up a list of people in a group. If you weren't able to do that, you can also create templates if it's the same kind of people use this in business to send out information to their employees and so forth. So, but it's another option. Another thing that happens when you're traveling sometimes is you get a buku emails in your inbox, and you don't want to save them all because it's taking up too much space and you've got too many emails in there. So one of the things you could do, well, you could go back and look on your server if you're like in Gmail or mail. But another thing you can do is you can create a mailbox on your iPad, and this goes for any other reason besides saving emails. So if you go into your, let me go back one here. If you go into your mailbox section on your iPad, where it says mailboxes, and then you go to the account that you're working with. I happen to have 2 accounts. Jerry has 400 on there, but some of you have more than one. And then you pick the account you want. Then you go up and you hit edit up in the top here. And what will appear is the option for a new mailbox down at the bottom. So you just tap on your new mailbox and you name it. Now it looks a little different in the new version than this is my old slide, but it doesn't matter as long as you type in the name. And then the name will show up in your little sidebar here. That's the one I did, saved from iPad. And then if you want to save this email message for future reference, you can just go up to this little envelope on the top. And when you press that, it will give you the choices of where to put it. So you pick the new mailbox that you just made, and you tap on it, and your email is now saved in there, and it's off of your mail list. So, sometimes the MUG group would send out an email that I thought I wanted to save because it had important information, but I didn't want to be carrying it in my iPad during my whole trip. So that's another thing that you can do. If you have, Numbers has an app for the Mac and also has one for the iPad. I found their spreadsheet on travel very helpful. So this is the Numbers app. It's $9.99. And by the way, the newest version is 1.7.2. So you can tell they've updated it over the last year or two. If you go in, they will give you several templates you can select from, one of which is called Travel Planner. So that's the one I selected. And it has several different tabs up here. And this is the template, it's Hawaiian Vacation. And you can pick the activity list, and you can list all the activities that you may be pre-planning, the dates, the time, location, any other information. If you want to replace these photos up here with the place that you're going to, you could do that, or you could just leave them, it's up to you. This is a handy one. You can put your reservations, your accommodations, reservations, emergency contacts. That might be very useful to put in all your emergency contacts in one place. You can find it. And then packing list. I found this most helpful. Once I made up this packing list, because we were gone for a few months at a time, and if you're on a ship, you got to think about a lot of stuff to take that you wouldn't normally worry about. Or if you're in a country where you can't buy stuff that you normally would run to the drugstore for, or the 7-Eleven or whatever. Having a packing list is very helpful. And it was the first time, it took me a long time to do it. But the thing that I did with the packing list was, as I was packing, I was checking off to make sure I had everything down that I had put in my packing list. And the other thing that was useful for is the next time I went on a trip, I just pulled up the old packing list that I had in Numbers, and it saved me a lot of time, and it reminded me of things that I needed to take. And they have different categories: clothes, toiletries, gadgets, so forth. You can make up new categories. And the way that you enter is you double touch on the cell, which you can't see it, but this is a cell here, it's outlined. If you want to put the time in there, you touch the time little gadget there. If you want to put the text in there, you touch the T. And if you want to put how many shirts you want, you touch the number here. And you just put it in your packing list. You could also do this on your computer if it's easier. It's faster on the computer than doing it on the iPad. And then just transfer it to your iPad, which is handy. I ran out of gadget list, so I had to make another copy. So you can make more copies of stuff. You know, by the time you talk about the camera and the iPad and scissors and paper clips and Scotch tape and whatever else you think you're going to need. This is the best use that I found for it, though. When you are traveling overseas, you have to go through customs and you have to declare stuff over a certain amount of money. And so what I did is I took a blank spreadsheet when I was on the ship, and I listed, I made the categories for the date, the number of items, the item itself, the country where I bought it, because they ask you that sometimes in customs, believe it or not. How much I paid for it locally, how much US dollars I paid for it, and any other notes I had to make. So instead of sitting the night before I got off the ship, or the night before you getting on the plane, each time I bought something, I just marked it down in my little spreadsheet. And then at the end, I just went to the formula here and I put in sum, so it told me how much I spent and where I spent it. Because some countries count and some countries don't count if you go to more than several countries. So I found that very helpful. And you can just make it up on your iPad at any time. Okay. Word processing, I think that speaks for itself. Pages is it's the 1.7.2 version now, and I use that for a lot of things. I use it for port lectures. I used it for journaling. And you can add pictures and stuff to that. As you remember when we did the iPad applications, I showed you how to put pictures and things in there. Another thing that you can do is, like, if you don't want to go through this whole business of moving your emails, but you want to save something, you can always copy and paste Pages. So you select it and you copy it and paste it, and then you can put it wherever you want to put it. But say you get an email, you want to keep it, just copy it, go into Pages, open up a blank document, and paste it in there. So that's another use for it. Photos, of course, I told you, backing up your photos. Now, I did have somebody talk to me about, what if you run out of space on your iPad for all your photos? Number one, I would suggest you have extra memory cards with your camera. Memory cards fail sometimes, or you take more pictures than you think you're going to take and you don't delete them all or whatever. There are other things you can do. If you have Dropbox on your iPad, you can move some of your pictures from your Photos app into your Dropbox app. Once they are saved in the Dropbox app, they're there. If you put them in PhotoStream and you delete them, they're going to be deleted if they're originally put into iPhoto on your iPad. So you don't want to delete them out of PhotoStream. But that's another thought. You can also buy backup hard drives and backup. There's actually now a backup flash drive for the iPad. So that's another thing you can do if you have, I mean, I put thousands of photos on here and I never ran out of space. But I was able to keep them on my memory card for my camera and on my iPad, which gave me a double backup. Plus the fact that you can, like, if you take 6 pictures of one event and 5 of them are not so hot, you can delete them from your iPad and give yourself some more room. You do need the camera connection kit to put them in the iPad unless you actually take the photo with your iPad camera. And I like to look at my photos at the end of the day. I like to email some to my family. We used to share the pictures that we took because sometimes we would go at a certain port, and some of our friends would go to one area and we'd go to another area. We share the pictures, say, oh, what did you see? And they'd show us, that was kind of fun. There is an app called iPhoto. It's about $5 or $6, and it's wonderful if you want to edit your photos. And it's very simple to use and very, very helpful. And you can always put your edited photos back into your photo app. Okay. Transferring documents. Once you get home, you may want to transfer some of the information that you have gotten, like your journals or your pictures or various things. So let's look at a couple of different ways you can transfer from your iPad to your computer. One way is to hook up your iPad to your computer with your USB cord. And here you will see under devices, your iPad will show up. You tap on the, or click on that, and then you go up to this section called apps, and you scroll down to the bottom. At the bottom of that page, you will see file sharing, and you will see all of these apps that you can transfer documents from your iPad to your computer. And you tap on the app you want to use. In this case, I tapped on Pages. You tap on the document in the app. If say you've got, this shows all the documents that were on my Pages app. So I chose the top one at the top, and then you select down at the bottom where you want it to go. And then when it says Save To, it'll bring up a little dialog box, just like when you save normally on your computer. So that would be a good way to get documents in. If you want to transfer photos, this is all through wired connection. The first thing you do before you plug your iPad into your computer is you go into iPhoto, Preferences, General, and you select what program you want to open up when you download your photos into your computer. And in here, I had the choice. I happen to have Adobe Bridge, so that would have been one of my choices. You probably don't have that on yours. Image capture or iPhoto or no application. Those would be your choices. So you select one of those. Then you connect your iPad to your computer, and then the program that you selected, either image capture or iPhoto, will open up when you hook up your iPad to your computer. If you select iPhoto, now this is an old version, it may look a little different now, but there's my iPad there, and then I get to either import all or import selected, and it's the same thing. You tap on the photos that you want, and they'll be downloaded into iPhoto. Now another choice is image capture, and it's an app that's already on your computer, and it has a few advantages over just sending it to iPhoto, so it's an option that you might want to choose. First of all, you have two different ways to look at your photos. You can look at the thumbnails the way they show in iPhoto, or you can look at this that gives you what they call the metadata, which shows you all the information about those photos. And for some reason you may want to, and there's a lot more than what's there, but it even shows you dates and times here, so you may be looking for a specific photo from a specific day or whatever. So that's another reason maybe to use image capture. And of course you have your import or import all there, same as on the other. And then this is another good reason to use it. At the very bottom, where it says import to, you have a lot more choices. You can go to your pictures, your desktop, your documents, and so forth, all the way down there. So if you select that, they've already given you a lot of choices. So I would recommend image capture, unless you just want to throw them all into iPhoto, that's okay too. But either way will work. If I'm doing anything wrong here, somebody speak up. I think I got them right. It's okay so far. All right, transfer wirelessly. If you aren't on iCloud, it's probably a good idea to get on iCloud, but that is a personal choice. To get on iCloud on your computer, you go into System Preferences and you'll see the little iCloud icon, and it gives you the opportunity to sign up for iCloud. You put your Apple ID in and your password, and voila, you get on iCloud. And then you have to do it also on your iPad. And so on your iPad, you go to Settings, go to the little iCloud, you put in your password and your Apple ID, and you're on iCloud on your iPad. So that's a way to wirelessly transfer. Now, the way you choose what to transfer, on your computer, you go into iCloud and System Preferences, and you choose Mail, Contacts, Calendars, Bookmarks, Photo Stream, Documents, Back to My Mac, Find My Mac, so forth. On your iPad, you go into the little icon. What do I do here? Okay. Okay. Uh-oh.
Where did that? What happened to your?
There it is. Okay. I hit something, sorry. Okay. And then you get your choice of what you want to sync there. Photo Stream will sync all your photos that you either add to your iPad after you hook up on Photo Stream. I don't know if you guys read the conversation we had the other day with Barrett Edwards, that he wasn't able to sync all his photos. And it was probably because some of the photos were on there before he put Photo Stream on. And if they're on before you put Photo Stream on, they're not going to automatically sync. Now, there is a way around that, but anything that you either take a photo with your iPad or that you add to your iPad with your SD card or your camera or USB hookup will automatically sync to your computer. When you turn it on and look under the Photo Stream, it will be there. If you want to sync any documents like Pages, Numbers, Keynote, and they said other apps, I don't know whether apps sync through documents. In my work now with the new iOS 7, I'm not sure, but I like to, like if I'm working on something, I like to put it in iCloud instead of on my computer so that I can work on it when I'm not, at home. But I took a lot of journal notes and so forth, so I was able to send them right to my computer through iCloud. Another great way to sync to your computer is through Dropbox, and we did a whole session on that, so I'm not going to go through how to do it. If you need to know how to do it, I can send you information on that from our class. But you need to set up Dropbox on your computer, and you need to set it up on your iPad. It will sync almost anything. It will sync Word, it will sync Apple documents, it will sync photos, it will sync movies, not long, 15 minutes of a movie, I guess. It'll sync audio, it'll sync everything. Now, one of the good things, suppose you're somewhere and your passport and your iPad get stolen, or your wallet or something. If you have, well, I'll get to that later, but if you have this stuff saved in Dropbox, you can access it from any computer, and that's the wonder about Dropbox. So I would certainly like to have Dropbox for instant syncing and for a lot of other reasons. There's a little app called PhotoSync that I use once in a while. It's $1.99 to put it on all your devices, and it will sync photos if you're on the same Wi-Fi network. There's probably others too, I just happen to know that one. Okay, how are we doing? Travel information. This is just one page of the thousands of travel apps that are out there. I don't know if there were out, what, 300,000 apps and iPad apps or something. I was watching Tim Cook mention that the other day. Anyway, so if you go to the App Store on your iPad, you have a lot of different things. And they give you categories: plan your trip, destinations, local guides, more travel tools. So I'm going to show you a few. Okay, as I mentioned before, iCloud, Dropbox, and Evernote, they all have great advantages, these apps. And the advantage is, if you somehow can't get online with your iPad or your iPhone or whatever, if you go to the website, iCloud has a website where you can find your documents that are in iCloud. You can't, I don't think you can get your photos there, can you? No photos there. But you can get your mail, you can get your documents, you can get your contacts, such other things. Dropbox, anything that's in your Dropbox folder, you can get from any computer anywhere on the world. So if you lose things, or you need information about copy of my birth certificate, copy of my passport, copy of my credit card information, copy of my doctor's phone number, whatever. Dropbox, you just go into any computer, you go to the Dropbox.com home, and all your folders are there and all your information is there. And the same thing with Evernote, that also syncs everything into a cloud where you can access it from online. There are other really good apps, documents by Riaddle. You can store manuals, guides, books you want to read, take control books, all kinds of stuff. You can also do music and videos and things like that. Goodreader, which is one of my favorites, that I stored a lot of stuff in. And iBooks can store PDFs. So, in fact, a lot of you might have put the PDF in iBooks today that I sent you yesterday. So that's very helpful. So the top three have the advantage of being able to access through any computer anywhere. The bottom three are very good for keeping information that you want to bring along with you. And you don't have to carry, I never carry my camera manual anymore. It's always on my iPad. Some other really good ones. Clock is already on your iPad. And believe it or not, you can see time all over the world on your clock app. It has a stopwatch and alarm, which is really handy. If you forget your alarm clock, you can set your alarm on your iPad or your iPhone. This is also a handy app, and there's several different ones. This is the one I use. It has currency conversions. It has things like centimeters and that kind of stuff that are different if you're going on the metric system, or centigrade to Fahrenheit, all those kind of little things that confuse you when they tell you the temperature and you're trying to compute it in your brain. So that's kind of a handy one. It has 100 different categories, so it's huge. Google Translate, a lot of people use, and it actually has a speak and you can have them say it for you to hear it. So that's one you can look at. This one, Tipping Guide, I find that very useful here. I use it all the time in restaurants to decide what tip I'm going to make. Instead of sitting there trying to add it all up, I just take out my little iPhone and figure out the tip. But they also have an international section to it, which is helpful because things are very different in other countries, how you tip. The expectations are very different. So for an extra $1.99, you can get the international section of that. And there are lots of apps that have temperature and weather on them, but this is one that uses that has a lot of international cities on it, so that's another useful one. TripIt is an organizer where you put all your confirmations in, they organize them and they email them to you, they remind you of stuff while you're traveling, and that's, especially if you're going to a lot of different places, it's very handy. This is a new one I discovered called Triposo, and I think it's a great app. It has travel guides for hundreds of countries in 40 cities. It has maps, it has websites, it has cultural information, dining information, it has common phrases. It takes a while to figure out all the things you can do with it, but I thought it was a very useful app. I haven't used it while I was traveling, but I did play around with it a lot because I had seen it on some websites. And as I mentioned before, if you want to have a spreadsheet for planning, all the major airlines plus Kayak and Orbitz, I think Priceline, they all have apps on there if you need to make reservations. A lot of hotel chains have apps on there too. These are just samples. While you're traveling, there are several apps that you can track your flights to see what they're doing. This Flight Pro is $9.99, which I thought was pretty high, but apparently it does a lot of things, like it tells you what gate your flight is at, if it's delayed, it syncs with TripIt. If your flight is canceled, it helps you find a new flight, and a whole variety of goodies. So if you're willing to pay the money, it's probably a very useful one. Another one, while you're at the airport, called Gate Guru. I punched in South Florida Regional, and I found out what restaurants were there, what arrival information. Of course, you can get that on their website too. I don't know that if you go into Southwest Florida website, they'll tell you what the flights are coming and going and what gates they're at and so forth, which I found helpful when family was arriving. They do have maps of the airport. They tell you the TSA waiting times, what the weather's like, and so forth. There are all kinds of map apps that work. This is the Apple Maps, this is the Google Maps. The Google Maps is really an iPhone app, but it does work on the iPad. It's just a little fuzzier to look at. My suggestion would be, if you're using maps on your iPad to find your way around on a given day, that you go online with another one of these maps apps, and like if you want turn-by-turn directions in Ireland, you're going to be spending a lot of money on data for that. So I would just go in there and get your turn-by-turn and read it from your device instead of hearing the little voice tell you as you go along, because otherwise you're going to spend a lot of money. Oops, okay. Wi-Fi Finder, there are two versions. One version has the free Wi-Fi spots, the other has the free and USA date is coming up on me, and paid spots. You can go and pick up the Wi-Fi spots and then save them on your iPad, and then you can use them offline. So you don't have to be online the whole day looking for Wi-Fi spots. Another one to find points of interest is called Around Me. Your location has to be on for that because they have to know where you are. So in the privacy settings under location services, make sure you have this app turned on so that they know where you are, then it can tell you what's around you. This is another good map one that I found called Global Maps. And this is another good one because it does have offline. You can go in there, do all you want to do, and then save it for the rest of the day. This is a public transit one called Hotspots. It has maps and directions for several US cities and a few foreign countries, but that tells you where you can find transit in those places. And then the National Geographic World Atlas, I used that a lot before. It's changed a bit. I don't like it as much as I used to, but it does have a lot of useful things. It can show you satellite views. It has a little thing where you can measure the distance between two spots that you select on the map. It has a currency calculator. It also has an offline option, and so forth. This little app up here, City Transit, is a transit map of the city of New York. All these are other transit maps of other cities. I'm looking at Atlanta, Chicago, Las Vegas, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Paris, Bangkok, Miami, Amsterdam, Singapore, Vienna, Hong Kong, Madrid, Brussels. So just go in the App Store if you want to get a transit map, and you probably can get one.
Are most of those free?
Yes, most of them are free. Okay, TripAdvisor, some of you are familiar with that. That gives you reviews on hotels, restaurants, and things to do. I know a lot of people use it and they think it's pretty accurate for the most part. Yelp is another one. If you want to find things nearby, you need to have your location turned on for that. And then I have TripOsa again, because once you're in the city, it has a lot of good stuff. And at the bottom, Rick Steves has another list of apps that he suggests, so you can check that out. Here's some games you want to bring on: solitaire, Scrabble, crossword puzzles. Trouble is sometimes you have to download those. And if you have any kids along, that works pretty good. The end. Okay, questions?
Very good.
Yes.
Don Hutchings.
Don.
You spoke a good deal about pictures, and the question I'd like to make is, are the pictures taken from your camera, then placed on the iPad? Can you get rid of them
Yes.
off the iPad?
You can get rid of them if you put them on, there is a way to get rid of them. If you have transferred them from your computer to your iPad, it's harder to get rid of them. If you take them with your camera and put them on your iPad, you can get rid of them, because the iPad is like the original place in your Apple system for doing it. I know there's a way to do it the other way, but if you're traveling and you have them on you either take a picture or you download them from your camera with the card or with the wire, you can delete them at that point, yes.
It puts them on the camera roll, doesn't it?
I believe so,
Yes.
yeah. You have to move it, if it's an old picture that you downloaded from your computer, you have to move it into PhotoStream or Camera Roll to delete it from the iPad. But if you just download it and camera, let's see if I can find one that I could get rid of. Photos. I have some photos that I downloaded directly from here to, I've already gone through some of these, let's see. All right, let's take this one. Okay, that's not going to work. So what I need to do is I need to go to edit.
Yeah.
So let me go back.
See, I
Go
got
to
it.
edit. Okay. Now, which was the one I chose? This one. Okay, see where it says delete?
Yeah, but it doesn't say edit up there.
No, let me go back.
She started it.
Okay, I'm going to go back here. Here. Okay. Then when I go and open up all these photos, if I go to edit, it gives me the opportunity to delete one after I select it.
I agree with that.
Okay, now these are photos that I put directly onto my iPad from my camera. If it's a photo that you put onto your iPad from your computer, an old photo, then it's a little more convoluted to do that. I have to check it out to tell you honestly how it goes. I don't know. I don't know if I have any old photos from my camera. I do. Okay, here's an old photo of an old guy. Okay, there is delete up there. It says delete one. That's an old photo. Okay, it never got downloaded into the iPad until I did it. So there you go.
It's the same process.
Right. Okay, any other questions? Mitch?
When you go into photos, you cannot delete photos from events or from hours,
Only from photos.
only from photos. You can't delete from events. I just tried to do it.
Okay.
Well, that's the same way on your computer.
Right.
If you can delete it, but it doesn't delete it from your computer.
Right.
It's still the photos.
Right.
So here it just allows you to do it with the photos.
Gene.
Gene, Marilyn, in Goodreader, how can I delete a document that I put in a Goodreader that is not working out?
Off the top of my head, I have to look at it, but let me email you that information. There is a way to do it. Yes.
Don Peacock, is there, you said you need a powered connector, USB connector, okay?
No,
Your camera has power.
no, you need a powered card reader, not a
Yeah, is there-
powered.
I'm asking about that. Can you buy that, a little battery? What?
Yeah,
Do you have one of
what,
those?
yeah, let me tell you the history on that. I have a memory stick, I don't have an SD card. And the camera connection kit only uses SD cards.
Right.
So I bought a multi-card reader that I plugged into my iPad, and then I plugged the memory stick into that, and that worked fine until they upgraded the operating system on the iPad. And they took some of the power out of that slot.
Right.
So when I plugged that card reader in, it didn't work. So I went online, and in fact, I could purchase a card reader that is powered. Instead, I just chose to use my USB cable from my camera. The only negative is that you're using battery from your camera to do it, otherwise it works just as well. But you can purchase powered card readers.
Marilyn, I'm just saying this without knowing it,
Right.
but I don't see any reason why a powered US hub plugged in and then a card reader plugged in to the hub would not work.
Anything that
It
has,
would probably
right,
work
it
if
would
you
probably
put it-
work, right. If
And
you-
it's easier to get an old cheap,
Right. If you have a hub with you, then you have to have the USB hub with you to do that. I was doing this when I was away from home. But anything that will give power to that device to get it into your iPad will work. But they changed the way they routed the power inside, on the inside. So yes, you can buy them. Since I only have one, now, when my kids come by, or I was over at my brother's house the other day, and I was showing him some iPhoto stuff, and he had an SD card in his camera. So I took the SD card and I downloaded that picture from his SD card into my iPad. And when I'm with my kids, or they come to my house and they have their camera, they just put their SD card in and they download the pictures right into my iPad. We were all together on a trip a couple of years ago, and they took pictures of the trip, and I took pictures of the trip. And so before they left, they downloaded all their SD cards into my iPad. So I had all their pictures, and I wasn't even home. So it works pretty easily. But they had SD cards, so it was just, I just put them in the camera connection kit.
Thank you.
So, yes.
Can I ask what size memory your iPad has?
I think I have 64. If you're gonna use, if you're
Right,
gonna do a
yes.
lot with photos or movies, you want 64. Although Bill has a smaller one, and I use, I get movies and then I convert them to the computer with the handbrake, and then I download them on our iPads. And I can download at least 6 or more movies on his iPad, but he doesn't have like a bazillion photos that I do, so. But that's enough. I don't want to go into that whole thing, but you can get movies onto your iPad to watch on the plane, because you usually hate them once they're showing. Any other questions? Okay, and Jean, I'll email you that. You want to delete a folder or a?
No, a document.
A document, okay.
You can just swipe it on a good reader. It'll delete it.
Just what?
You can just swipe your finger on it.
Oh,
it'll delete
okay,
it.
just swipe it.
Yeah, just swipe it or
On the iPad?
on the iPad or, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, I just have to do it.
Or you can work with files and highlight them, and it'll have a delete option, but then
Right.
you just swipe your finger, it'll give you the option to delete.
That's true.
Yeah.
If it's in the left sidebar,
Yeah.
just swipe your finger there and it'll go.
Yeah,
Or you can go into manage files
yeah, and then.
and delete it from
select
there.
it, Yeah,
Yeah,
And it's on the iPad?
Yes.
and the phone.
and the phone, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, no worries, Jeff.